We can all agree that stepping beyond the classroom can open the door to powerful learning experiences for students. When young learners engage with the real world, they can gain confidence, develop practical skills, and discover new perspectives that shape their future paths. Our next session, Internships, Apprenticeships, and Experiential Learning in High Schools, will explore how schools create meaningful opportunities that connect education with real-world experiences. To shed more light on this topic, let's give a warm welcome to our moderator. We have Dr. Satyanarayan Dev, the Associate Professor and Chair at Florida A&M University. And our panelists, we have Lisa Canning, the CEO of Working Musicians Academy, Genea Genea Ewing-Wilson, the coordinator at C2 Pipeline, Sridhar Kuppa, the co-founder of Huntward Advisors, Beth Gutzler, the head community organizer at United Congregations of MetroEast, and Raelene Ferguson Haugen, the president and founder of Raesup Educational Consulting. Their insights and experiences are sure to spark new ideas and inspire us all. Welcome them to the stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. We are starting 6 minutes into our session already. So, we will try to keep it short, but at the same time as informative as possible. So as I was introduced, I'm Satya. I'm the session moderator here. I'll start with Lisa first, right next to me here. So Lisa, the music industry is one of the earliest examples of apprenticeship-style learning. So mentorship, performance, and real audience is all part of it all the time. So how was the Working Musicians Academy formalized that tradition into a model that high schools could actually learn from?
The beautiful thing about that question is that it has dual purpose. One is that high school students need to feel empowered through experiential learning to feel like they can earn and they can learn at the same time. And by putting a digital program together that allows people to learn real world skills that they can immediately get feedback on and get early customers, early adoption, but also develop a useful skill, you can develop the apprenticeship model in a way that doesn't take away from the diminishing number of people in the community that presently do that at a professional level because they don't have the time to offer the apprenticeship to the students. But instead, you can empower those people to help them because now they have enough skill to want to be able to participate and help them. And so it's a beautiful way to bring vocational training into a community and to revitalize an industry, to give kids the opportunity to earn, as well as to get apprentices back involved with that learning process.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. So next is Genea, sitting next to Lisa here. Genea, the pipeline program exists precisely because the path from school to career isn't automatic. So someone has to build the on-ramp. So can you walk us through what the C2 pipeline does and what gap it is filling in schools that schools alone cannot do?
Absolutely. So the C2 pipeline program, first I should start with what C2 stands for. C2 stands for College and Career Readiness, which means that we are the pipeline to help students get ready for college and also get ready for career. We work in the Metro Detroit area with economically disadvantaged students. So the majority of our students come from situations that make reaching college or reaching a specific career more challenging for them. We operate 2.5 hours a day for 4 days a week. And our project model is to teach them STEM activities, also college and career planning, leadership, and teamwork. And during the summer, we do something called IPE Camp. IPE Camp is an opportunity for our students to come to Wayne State University's campus, and they get to live like college students for almost 2 weeks. They come in the morning time, we provide them breakfast. We take the students to do real college classes within various career fields from dentistry to nursing to social work and a few other ones. In the afternoons, they get in their groups and they work on a project Every single year, it is based on the same thing, same topic. So it will be like cancer or diabetes. They have to work together as a team to come up with an idea to counter some of the difficulties that come with cancer or diabetes. And at the end of the IPE camp, they are rewarded if they become winners. I actually had a team my first year at the current school that I was at to actually win a scholarship for that. At C2 at MC, which is just a piece of the pie of the Wayne State C2 Pipeline program, one of our 14 schools, I teach college and career prep. Like I said, we want to make our stuff engaging, relevant to the real world. So what I do is I do resume building. I teach them how to fill out college applications. We do actual interviews within my program so they can see what that is like. We do trades. I was the first person within my building to bring in trades. I heard my students say, you know, we really want to learn about trade opportunities. All we talk about is colleges and careers. We're not often told about trades. So I had students watch videos. I brought in professionals from the career fairs, like my husband, he came in and spoke about one of the trades that we offered. And then I also I also have them do hands-on projects so they can kind of get an idea what the different trades are. So we've done everything from welding to electrician to construction to even fun trades like cosmetology. My girls really enjoy learning about makeup, skin, hair, things of that nature. We bring in social emotional learning and soft skills because I need my students to understand the importance of teamwork and communication as well as other soft skills. And then I am very, very big proponent of student voice and choice. What I mean by that is I believe that my students should have a voice in my program. Since we run after school for 2.5 hours, 4 days a week, it is extremely important that they have a say in what is happening with their education. So they vote for their youth council members, who are the 5 individuals who work directly with me to make the program everything that we need it to be. They also vote on field trips, enrichments that I teach, and more. If you would like to see what we do at C2 at MC, you can look at that on our Instagram page. It's C2ATMC, and it will show everything that I've been doing for the past year. I'm going to end on this last note before I turn it over to the next person. My philosophy at C2 at MC is active listening, not passive listening. My students know day one when they step into my program, the expectation is active listening, not passive listening. If they're active listening, I know that they're hearing what I'm saying, they're taking it to heart, they're doing what needs to be done. If they're doing passive listening, then I know they heard what I said, but they didn't really hear what I said. We know what passive listening looks like because we know that students sometimes do that to their parents. I am the same way with active learning and passive learning. I want them to really be engaged and take away those lessons that I've taught them. So I have a high expectation of active learning. On top of that, we do college field trips. I have professionals to visit. We have military, like I said, youth council comes. My last 2 things that I have for my philosophy is that we are each other's support system. I let it be known that even though I am the one that runs the program, just like everybody else in my room, I need support too. And my students support me full time, and I support them full time. An example of that is I just got a text message today from one of my students. She said, I'm applying for a job. I put you down as one of my reference. I said, excellent, I got you. Because I want them to know that I am there. I am their support system. And lastly, my last philosophy is that by the time they reach 12th grade, that they know what they're going to do. I promote 4 avenues for our students. Either you're going to college, you're going into the workforce to get a job, you're starting a business, or you're going into the military service. I don't want any student to step out of my program without knowing what the game plan is. Like I said, I work with students that are African American and economically disadvantaged. So I am one of their primary support systems. So it's very, very important to me that they get everything that they need.
Thank you, Genea. So next we have Sridhar here. So Sridhar. It's a bad idea to use the phone for this. People call you. So, Sridhar, as an advisor working with students on career and college decisions, you're often the person who sees where preparation breaks down, right? So what's the most common thing you wish high schools have done before a student lands in your office?
Thank you, Satya. Good morning, everyone. And my name is Sridhar, and I'm co-founder of Huntward Advisors. as a parent of two teenage boys who are entering high school in the next 3 years, I think, a couple of things that really I wish the schools would do a lot more is, you know, in the schools, usually we focus on education, syllabus, and whatnot, right? I think one of the things that I would wish the schools would do is teaching professional agency also to students. What I mean by that is being able to manage ambiguity as they enter into college, right? Because there are a lot of decisions that they're going through right around 11th and 12th grade, and what they want to do, where they want to work, and what their future is, right? So I think there are three core pillars that I wish schools would focus on. One is financial literacy as a strategy. Every student should understand the ROI of what they're getting into, right? They should not be doing a program that costs $100,000 and then at the end of the day they are getting $40,000 as a salary, right? So financial strategy, or financial literacy as a strategy, should be a core pillar that should be taught in schools, in my opinion. The second one is the feedback loop, right? In corporate, at least in our company, we focus on constant feedback loop, right? In schools, if you look, students are graded at periodic intervals, and in my opinion, having a constant feedback loop where you're giving feedback to the students as the year progresses, helps them understand how they are performing. And then lastly, problem solver identity is what I would think is a core pillar that a school should have, where a student is not just being a student, but they're also acting like a consultant, where they are trying to identify problems and trying to solve them. And then, so if a student comes to my office and they know how to speak a little bit of professional language and they know how to calculate certain aspects of ROI and so forth, I think that'll be a really big contribution that they are doing from day one onwards.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sridhar. So just to piggyback on that in the same line, I'm moving on to Joy, who's the Chief Admissions Officer. It kind of connects to what Sridhar was talking about. So Joy, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing the university name correctly.
Let's see how you do.
Tricoci?
Tricoci University.
Tricoci,
Yeah.
okay. Tricoci sits at the intersection of vocational training and higher education. So your students graduate ready to work, often well before their peers come out of the 4-year traditional education. So from the admissions lens, what signals tell you that a high school student has genuinely had the formative experiential learning?
So in admissions, and I'm over admissions and marketing for Tricoci University, it's a group of beauty schools in the Midwest. And it is true, we have students come in straight from high school, and they graduate usually by the time they're 18, 19 years old from the university, and they go out to the workforce early. And that can be tricky because they haven't had the opportunity to be at a 4-year university. But we find that doing an admissions interview with every student that comes in, so they get to meet with somebody in admissions, and we walk them through the entire process. We show them the curriculum, we cover outcomes, just like you were referencing with ROI. They don't know that term, but that's essentially what we're trying to cover with them, just to make sure that they are ready for this. On top of that, we have articulation agreements with high schools. What that means, a lot of students can come in and take classes at Tricoci University while they're doing a dual track in the high school as well, or they can have that program at their high school, which it sounds like maybe you have in the Detroit area. And then we'll take those hours, because it's a clock hour program, and that way they really get to try the education before they commit to it at the university level. So we have a couple different ways to really make sure that they're ready to go into this industry, and I think we've had huge success with it. A lot of students right now, I call them the tool belt generation. They're very eager to go out and pursue their passion immediately, and they are very cost sensitive. They're not that interested in going into a high debt program, and so this is a great solution for that group of students.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Yeah.
Joy. Next, we have Beth. So, Beth, faith-based and community organizations have long served the informal apprenticeship environments. Service, leadership, and organizing are all part of it. So how does United Congregations think about the intentional role that the house schools could play in how communities have always trained young people?
Yeah, thank you so much. So yes, I've been focusing when I've been with UCM and other nonprofits in the St. Louis, Missouri area on those high school seniors, those first year students in the 4-year degree program, and providing what my practicum students call the field instructor role, right? So nonprofits in our local communities can play that field instructor role for these individuals who need to connect some high-level concepts to like real things going on in their community. And so for a best example with our environmental justice work, you know, when you're learning about what you can do to save the planet, you want to get your hands dirty and go do something. So it allows us to provide an opportunity to organize a cleanup or speak to people who are actually suffering from impacted water issues that they won't receive when they're just learning about it in the classroom.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ben. So let's move on to Raelene. As a consultant working across educational systems, you have a bird's eye view of what's actually being implemented versus what's being talked about. So what's one experiential learning model you have seen work exceptionally well and one that looks good on paper but consistently does not deliver?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and I love talking about experiential learning. I'm very passionate about it. My name is Dr. Raelene Haugen with Raesup Educational Consulting, like you said. I have about 30 years experience teaching from all the way from kindergarten through doctorate level classes. And early on in my teaching career, I realized that I was just bored teaching out of textbooks, teaching off of worksheets. And I wanted something more exciting for my students. And I knew if I couldn't get excited about it, my students couldn't get excited about it. And so I started developing a model for myself that later on I called experiential learning. And it took a while to understand all that went into it. And I think to answer your question, well, let me backtrack a little bit. I've had an opportunity to talk to provosts of universities who have STEM training programs for teachers. Teachers love going to these programs. They get excited when they go and they get the training, but when they go back into the classroom, they're not actually doing what has been taught to them. And the reason why, from what I've observed and what I've talked with these people that have these programs, is that it's not, they're not supported in the way that they need to be to really make this successful. So experiential learning, a bad model of it would be that you go into a classroom and you know, maybe students are doing a science experiment. They're doing, you know, hands-on learning with a science experiment, or maybe they're doing a play for social studies, or maybe they're integrating technology into a subject. But that's it. That's where it stops, because teachers don't have the time to really make it at the level that it needs to be. They need support from the school district, from their schools, to change the time structure that they are implementing experiential learning. They need the resources. They need support in planning. So to me, a successful model of experiential learning, which is something that I believe that I've done, you integrate subjects together because that models the real world. So you're going to have science, social studies, language arts, math, technology in there. It's all going to be integrated, because that, if you go into the real world, that's what it's going to be really like. And if we're trying to train our students to become citizens for the future that are innovators and creators that can keep up with technology, that's the way they need to learn. It can't be linear. It has to be all integrated together, and it has to be very meaningful, and it has to be impactful. So we need to change the way our day looks in the educational system so that we have blocks of time that we can integrate all these subjects together. We can make sure it's aligning with our grade standards. We have the resources that we need. And that would be an example of what a model would be. And so if I were to give a real world example that I've done before, let's say that they're going to learn California history, and we take them out into, we take them out to some Native American area, and we have someone come in who is actually an indigenous person who tells stories, and they try on the different things that the Native Americans wore, and they try the food, and they learn the science behind oceanography and why these animals work for them and why they didn't, and they do art that's incorporated into it. That all is an experience that they'll never forget, and it's so impactful, and that's what real life is about.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ray. Well, I would like to add probably 2 cents worth in this whole thing. Well, from a university perspective, like when the students come prepared from high school with experiential learning, they stand out, at least in all the classes, because I'm a boy with the toys who builds the toys he plays with. So I'm all into experiential learning. As an engineer, finding solutions and building equipment to solve the problems is what I focus on mostly, and I involve students in doing that. And when the students come in with that experiential learning, that real-world experience, they are at a much higher level in understanding the perspective and implementing it, rather than someone who has no clue, who's just been schooled all this while. So that's it's really wonderful to have that experiential learning. And some things that I have done are building virtual reality models, like kind of gamified as well, that they can actually, for example, to prepare them for potential careers in Forest Service. So wildfires, how to prevent wildfires, one of the ways is to do prescribed burns, right? So how would you do prescribed burn without burning yourself? So that requires probably burning yourself virtually a few times. So that's exactly what they do. So you're allowed to do mistakes and learn in a virtual environment, and you kind of have the leaderboard. So, yes, if you die 3 times, that's it. The game's over. So, but technically that kind of gives them a peer pressure that, I need to do better than him. It gets competitive, and they learn, at least in a virtual environment, that I could provide them, because in a real environment, I cannot afford to lose them. So it really helps in that perspective. So having said that, I would like to ask a few questions that anyone from the panel could just answer. Well, I'm cutting short on things because we started late. So please raise your hand if the students you serve have equal access to quality internship, regardless of family income or the zip code where they come from. So that gap, who wants to close it? It's the responsibility of the schools, employers, the government, or us in this room. Anyone? Yeah. Beth, please.
I do think, especially for universities, for those freshmen who are just starting, that is probably someone who could fill the gap in my mind. I think back to the story of one of my first interns from a low-income community, and she needed a car to get to some of our events that she was going to represent and be independent and confident without me, right? She was going to build that skill. She needed housing that summer to work with us full-time rather than being virtual. And so the university she worked with filled that gap. They had a fund for that, and it was really great for her.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, Lisa, go ahead.
The arts are in great decline, and the only way that we can improve people to have vision for the future and to connect their emotions to the work they do is through building empathy and to develop skills that are related to the arts. And if you are not artistic or you're not musical, it doesn't matter, because we need to put those things into society. There's a model of thinking that's Herman's whole brain thinking, 2 R's, 2 N's. Recommend you look it up, because it's very validated science that basically supports that 95% of the population recognize patterns and recognize facts. And only 5% of the population have vision and have the emotional connection. And those things come from the art. So from STEM to STEAM is everyone's responsibility. Everyone has to bridge that gap in order to make our future be brighter.
Thank you, Lisa. Genea, you had something to say?
So as I've already explained, I come from the after-school sector of education with college and career readiness. We know that there is unequal opportunities for students. I do believe that it is the responsibility of those working in the after school to do as much as they possibly can to even the playing field for our students, especially those in minority communities, Black students, brown students, ELL students, because it's just so much unequal things happening, especially with funding. We look at federal funding, we all understand that the bigger the school, the more funding. But then if you look at a local funding, we know that more highfalutin schools are afforded more opportunities for success for their students compared to those schools that are struggling and underprivileged.
Thank you, Genea. So any other comments? Anybody wants to chime in? Anybody from the audience wants to chime in on that?
I'll chime in.
Yeah.
So I work for a university. It's a clock hour program. It's really designed to get people ready for the beauty industry. I would say we feel it's our responsibility at the university, regardless of their zip code or what their parents do. We offer 2 career fairs a year. They're required to attend. So we try to create a level playing field for any person who's in our building. We feel accountable for that. We feel like that's what we should be providing. And our goal is for them to graduate and then successfully pass their licensing exam and go be a successful career person in that industry. So we feel the role is ours in the university, and we try to eliminate any of those barriers wherever they're from. It doesn't even matter. Every person in the building has the same access to that opportunity.
Wonderful.
I'd like to just add one thought. You know, everybody is responsible. As the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a kid, right? So everybody is responsible, and we need to have redundancies established at each place so that if one thing falls behind, the other one is able to pick up. So I think it's everybody's responsibility to make sure that we close the gap, and it's a community responsibility.
Thanks, Sridhar. So, well, then the next question may be appropriate to you and Lisa here, but feel free to chime in if anyone has answers. So getting employers to take high school interns is a real pain. The main reason being, they're worried about liability concerns, their bandwidth, skepticism about their readiness, and all these issues. So what's the most effective pitch you've seen to bring a reluctant employer to the table?
Well, see, it's not more like a liability that employers look at it. They are just risk averse, right? To bring in a high schooler for an internship compared to a college student to an internship there's a little bit of maturity that's there in a college student. They're able to navigate that ambiguity, like I said before, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the best way to look at this is don't look at it as an internship, but look at it as an R&D on your future employees, right? It's 10 times cheaper to bring in a high schooler and who can then understand your culture rather than spending a lot of money on a headhunter who goes and brings a total stranger who may or may not work out for you, right? That's one point. The second thing is, I don't know which generation they are, Z or Alpha, but they come with a new perspective, right, that we probably lack, especially leveraging technology and digital assets that are out there. And then, what I like to call is a vetted guarantee, which I think she mentioned earlier, where the students are vetted by the school to have gone through a minimum understanding of what it is to work in a corporate environment. Basic communication skills, how do you uphold NDAs, right? One of the key things that corporate worries is how is confidential information treated, right? So if high schoolers are taught saying, hey, there are NDAs that you have to uphold, you cannot discuss things publicly or with your friends as you wish, I think that kind of helps you reduce the friction and increase your ROI.
Wonderful, thank you.
In my opinion, as someone who started at the age of 17 to have to work with adults and sell to people who are twice my age often and above, the fastest way is through being able to demonstrate a pattern of success. And if you adopt early customers and you develop skills early, even if you are less than the mature person of a college student, but you can demonstrate that people trust you and will do business with you and will work with you, you are a safe bet. And when you look through resumes, when you look at college resumes, you often see patterns of just familiarity. Well, I did this in my school district. I did this with people I know. In our program, we work very hard to get them to step outside and develop relationships in their community so that it looks much broader and they have a much deeper perspective. If that isn't compelling to an employer, I don't know what would be.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. So another very quick question. So the graduation rates and test scores are easy to measure. Then that's what we go about all the time. Career preparedness is not. So what metrics the school should include in order to make sure they are bringing out kids who are career prepared?
Well, first, using standardized testings, that's based in eugenics. It's biased to various racial groups and stuff like that. So I wouldn't argue that that is the best way to say that a student is prepared for a career. In regards to career preparedness, I strongly believe in advising bringing in professionals that are, top level within their career field. I bring in experts to my after school program all the time. The last one we brought in, she was, I guess, top of her game for finance literacy. And we brought her in and she talked to our students from everything from stocks to managing money to trades, just a whole bunch of different topics that were really beneficial to our students. Schools have to do more to bring in college and career readiness preparedness. We cannot simply just talk to our students about colleges. We do need to bring in more careers with our academics, find ways to make the connection. I understand that as teachers, we have to focus on our core curriculums during the school day, but it needs to be more of a connection and not just a connection that is happening in an after-school setting.
Wonderful. Like from a university perspective, I often use this analogy that us as university professors, we are catching the bull by the tail and get kicked on our face. Okay, so you want to catch a bull, you better catch it by the horn, right? And it has to happen at the high school level. So if you're trying to, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. So that's what happens when the students come to the university level and they haven't learned the necessary skill set that they need to learn that higher level of classes. So we often face that problem. So we end up starting at a much lower level than we had to, so we can only go so far. So we kind of end up leaving the students lower than where they are supposed to go to. So it kind of piggybacks all the way through the elementary school, but high school is kind of critical. Honestly, personally, I haven't learned a single thing from the breadth of knowledge after my high school. The depth of knowledge has increased in several fields after that, but the entire breadth of knowledge that I have today is only from my high school. So that's something that we need to focus on, giving that breadth of knowledge to students. So, yes.
Yeah, I would just like to add on to what you and Genea said. I do think that it's so important to gauge their preparedness for the real world by bringing in, professionals from all industries. Mm-hmm. I also think that we need to take it a step further, and we actually need to get them into those industries, into the workplace of those companies, and let them just like get the osmosis going, like really feel it, like understand this is what the environment is like. This is what goes on in these industries. And I think that is another level above having them come in and talk to the students. It's far more effective. And the thing about the standardized testing, I do understand how there is some bias and all that. I don't think we should throw it out. I think we can use it as one measure, as a tool. With experiential learning, I did it in the elementary level for probably over 10 years. And once I started doing it, my standardized test scores, my student standardized test scores went skyrocketing. With experiential learning, where it's non-traditional, we're not doing everything out of textbooks, that was just a tool. So their scores were going up like 2 grade levels a year across the classes, so as an average. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that. And going into the communities and having leaders in these fields give us the standard. Like, how do we know? Like, let them tell us that this is the standards that we need to be meeting with our students. So
Wonderful. Yes, Beth.
Quick closing thought. Just like in standardized testing, it teaches the student what they don't want to do next when they don't do well. In experimental learning, it has taught many people that I've been with what they don't want to do next.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, well, we are pretty much at the last 6 minutes. So before we continue any further discussion, I want to give an opportunity to the audience to address a question here. So we have heard from practitioners building this work from studios, clinics, congregations, pipelines, consulting rooms, universities. So now I want to hear from you, educators, administrators, employers, or someone who has been through one of these programs. What question in this conversation is raising for you? Yes.
Oh, there's a mic.
I work with organizations who have Gen Z professionals on navigating their organizational environments. I've had an opportunity to work with high school as well as college level students. We're talking mentors, sponsors, networking, how you're evaluated, all of those things that make you successful in organizations. I help organizations get productive Gen Z employees quickly. My question is, what type of preparation are you able to have with the students you work with, Gen Z being anywhere from 9th graders up to age 30, behind them, Generation Alpha. Gen Z is our future leadership. What type of preparation within your programs do you have to navigate organizational dynamics beyond their technical expertise in their particular workforce?
Thank you.
Wonderful question.
You
Yes,
want me to
yes,
come?
Beth, go ahead.
So the two main things that the people I work with, they come in, these students really crave the opportunity to be creative and the permission to make something, and I think we talked about it in some panels last time, to make something and to do something all their own. And then the other one is where my background with social and emotional and restorative practices, that in the sort of conversations that they need to have, that was brought up in these as well. Like, they need opportunities to practice that day in and day out with people that are their different ages. So the opportunities that we've created for them is to get those two particular skills in the field to add to everything else that they're bringing.
Great, thank you. So, and anyone else wants to add to that?
I'll add to it. So we really focus on real world experience. So experiential learning is all about what we do. In fact, once you pass through the first half of your program, you're really learning by doing. You're on a clinic floor, you're doing guest services, you're learning how to use the guest booking system, you're really putting together a business model to understand how many clients would I need to see in order to be profitable when I graduate here. So experiential learning is really all part of it, but I think that just depends on where this person is going to school. I really focus on Gen Z, that is my primary focus. And I agree with you. I think they're marvelous and they are the future, and we really need to take good care of them. And they do have different perspectives, and they're really preparing for jobs that probably don't even exist yet. If I know there was an influencer in here that was in the talk earlier today. They want to be an influencer. They really are passionate about marketing, things that you wouldn't necessarily learn behind a chair doing hair, but we want to make sure that that's woven into the program as well, because they need to understand that side of it. But experiential learning is the main key factor, and I think that is one thing that sets trade schools apart from traditional universities. You're learning by doing, and that's really the best way to prepare you to fully, eyes wide open, understand what you're going to go out and do once you graduate and leave the university.
I'd like to add to that.
Just to piggyback off of that, I have one small thing to add. Everything in life is about sales, whether it's finding a spouse, getting a job, working with a customer. It's always about marketing and sales, right? And so in our program, by getting early customers and having to satisfy them and work through difficult things if they weren't able to be successful, they adopt that skill and understand exactly how sales works and to truly create deep satisfaction. So that's an incredibly important skill that transcends anything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ray?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that too. When we talk about high school students doing internships, I think one of the biggest mistakes that these companies make when they have high schoolers come in to do an internship is putting them in entry-level positions and thinking of it sort of as like free labor, or like this is where they will be when they graduate. But we have to change that mindset, because if we want them to be prepared for the real world, they need to be able to go in and observe the different elements that make this company what it is. They need to be in the think tank room. They need to be next to the innovators and watch how they do what they do. That's part of what my message is to the companies that have the high school students come in. And one of the first questions was about how do we make this accessible to all people? If we collaborate with the community, a lot of times businesses are willing to provide funding for some of the experiential programs that are going on within schools. So that is one way to make it accessible to all people.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate that. So, yes. So some researchers argue, like this is a general question for everybody, like pushing career readiness too early, that is at the high school level, kind of makes a 16-year-old, for example, shadowing that Ray just mentioned, if they shadow an accountant, they might think that they want to be one, but that doesn't mean that that's who they really want to be. And then, it kind of puts them in a roller coaster for their career later on. So does experiential learning at the high school level is locking students into a certain track prematurely? What do you think of it? Anyone from the audience?
Exposure. Their mind going, I don't think we lock them in.
Exactly. But my take on that, just to add to that, is making that clear to them. This is just an exposure. This is not what we say that your future career is going to be. And also giving them an opportunity to shadow more than one in an organization. If they get to be in one, they should be able to see all different career paths that are within that organization so that they're not mentally getting locked into one. So that's just my take on it. Yes.
Quick, you go ahead, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was from my first exposure with Generation Alpha. We won't have this problem. They have a different personality. They do not want to follow along with things. We will not have this problem.
So be ready.
Yeah, it's like, like one of those old Charlie Chaplin movies, and the car engine has a problem, so he stops the car, takes the engine out, and drives away. Yes.
So in my opinion, it's two things, right? It's a stress test for the student, and the cost of failure, like you said, is very low, actually zero, right? You said they can shadow an accountant and they can say, I absolutely hate it. And they save 3 years of college, and they can move on to something else. But I also think the key thing that we want to imbibe in every student is not prepare them for a career, but rather think of how they want to contribute to the society in terms of problem solving and what makes them passionate.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to make a brief, very quick comment. I completely agree with that, which is why within my after-school program, we talk about starting businesses. I introduce things like how to market your idea, how to finance your idea. We're talking about the different costs, manufacturing costs versus sale costs. Because at the end of the day, I want them to find the path that is right for them. And a lot of them are not going to choose college. They're not going to choose to go into a workforce. Like they said on this panel, this is a different generation of students. So they're coming with new ideas, and a lot of their ideas come with technology. They want to be on the internet. They want to be able to utilize their social media networks to relate and connect to people. So we have to move along with how they're moving, and that's why I've always thought it was a good idea to bring business into my after-school program, and I've been doing that for the last couple of years.
Wonderful. One last final word. Anyone would like to have a final comment on this, something that you really wanted to say, a burning comment, burning suggestion, because we are out of time.
Oh.
Yes.
Also helping them find grants and being able to write a request for a grant.
Yes, absolutely, in my case. I hosted a session within my classroom where with my 9th through 12th grade students, I understand that at the time, my 9th and 10th graders are not looking for scholarships. However, my 11th and 12th graders are. So we had a workshop in which I had my seniors pair up with my freshmen and sophomores, explain to them the type of things they're interested in. And then that group went on a search and found scholarships for them to apply for. So it became a very collaborative activity that was for the benefit of my juniors and seniors so they would have the scholarships needed to be able to succeed.
Just one quick and final addition. Sorry, go ahead, Beth.
Oh,
Yeah.
you said final words.
Okay.
In all, like corporate and in nonprofit, I always hear, oh, we just don't have a strong team, or how do I make a team stronger? And in our training, there's one element that's all in community organizing, it's always train and develop new leaders. So no matter what the situation is, if you're not involving the youth, you're gonna struggle with your team.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful final note. Thank you.